Part 112. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1113. Thinking of her daughter from her younger sister, Mu Yangling couldn't help feeling worried, and leaned on Chi Heiran's shoulder and said, "Why don't we find a childhood sweetheart for our daughter too? Come on, is your daughter still worried about getting married?" Chi Heiran turned over with his eyes closed, and muttered, "Go to sleep, don't you still want to visit the experimental farm tomorrow?" Mu Yangling was dissatisfied and said, "Why are you not worried about your daughter at all? Look at my sister, she is both talented and beautiful, and her family background is not bad, but because of this single-minded condition, she was left as an older leftover girl. Yangling thinks it is just right to get married at this age, but the world doesn't think so." Looking at Kijia's expression today, she can tell how much psychological pressure she has endured. Chi Heiran turned over and looked at his wife. He felt that Aling was completely worrying, but if he didn't explain it, he probably wouldn't be able to sleep well tonight. How many are like Grandpa? Before Mu Yangling showed disgust, Chi Heiran sighed and said, "Besides, your sister's marriage is not as simple as being single-minded. Let's just say the two of us. I admit that I can be regarded as both civil and military, but when will I ask for it? What about your talent? Which one do you know about piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting? Why do people with family background, ability, and mind, both civil and military, have to like your sister? Even if you like your sister at first sight, you have to ask the other party not to accept it before you have any feelings. A concubine accepts a house, and any man with a little heart will not agree. There are so many women in the world, and there are also many excellent women. Why do they have to hang themselves on this tree?" Chi Heiran is a man, and his thinking direction is completely different from that of Mu Yangling. He put his hands behind his head and said, "So, this matter is mainly because your sister's method is wrong. Back then, you didn't even see her. I just asked me not to take concubines in the future. If we hadn't been together for 4 or 5 years and had a deep relationship, who would agree to such a condition?" Mu Yangling looked at him and asked, "Have you ever thought about taking a concubine?" Chi Heiran curled his lips and said, "Which man has never thought about taking a concubine? This is taking a concubine and not marrying a wife. As long as you are beautiful in Chi Heiran's eyes, a concubine's room is like a toy. You can buy it if you like it, and play with it. If you get bored, throw it away." Mu Yangling couldn't help grinding his teeth, stretched his feet, and thought that his injury was not complete, so he took it back, so he could only press his right chest, and asked aggressively, "Say, how many concubines did you want to take in before?" Chi Heiran was stunned. It was over. He forgot his face. Why did he mention this in front of Aling? He hurriedly said, "How could I have thought so carefully? I only listened to what Zijin said. I only had you in my heart at that time. How could I think about the concubine's room?" Mu Yangling looked at him suspiciously. "You just said that no man doesn't want to take a concubine." "That's right." Chi Heiran held back for a while, and said, "I'm talking about most of it. We're talking about Beizu's marriage, of course we have to think about it." Mu Yangling hummed softly, let go of him, and said, "Then what do you say about your daughter's marriage, and what if your son-in-law takes a concubine in the future?" "He dares," Chi Heiran was annoyed, "dare to bully the master's daughter. How many ambitions did he eat? Twisted melons are not sweet. If you pressure him to spoil his daughter like this, what if he treats her coldly and violently? Also, everyone can see that his heart is not true. Be careful that your daughter is sad." Mu Yangling hurriedly rode. Chi Heiran looked at his wife with a headache. "You have come to stand after the new year. Why are you still like a child? There is no such pure love between a man and a woman in this world. Feelings come from all over the place. I am the emperor's relative brother, Beizu is the cousin of the next emperor, the future King Rong, and even Prince Rong's own sister. If you say that people who want to marry our family are only interested in Beizu, You won't believe it if you kill Grandpa. Man, I dare not promise the orb to her. Chi Heiran said, the former is concerned about the power of our family, and the respect and admiration of the orb will not be less. Even if there is no affection one day, with the respect, the orb can still be poor? And the latter, Chi Heiran curled his lips, this kind of person is undoubtedly a fool. Let's not say that the master looks down on him. Even if Bezu is really unfortunate to marry such a person, one day the young couple will have conflicts and can't go on. Such a person will definitely hurt everyone. Bezu, because he doesn't care about our family's prestige. Our family's family background is here. Anyone who can talk about marriage with our family will not be bad. No big family with background will do things like spoiling concubines and destroying wives. Look at the imperial wife's natal family, the Li family. Although it is a descended family, but the family wealth is never lacking. Although such a family occasionally takes concubines, but not many, they are very scrupulous about female sex. In the future, our son-in-law will definitely come from such a big family. He is not for the treasure not taking a concubine, but not taking a concubine for himself, for Bezu, and for the family, and the latter, flaunting his love for Bezu and not taking a concubine? If he doesn't love him, will he take a concubine? Chi Heiran curled his lips, I don't want to kill him. Mu Yangling was at a loss, so pure feelings are not good. Chi Heiran hugged her and said, Master didn't say that pure feelings are bad, but with our identities, if the other party shows pure feelings, he is either a really nice person, or a treacherous person. The former is too stupid, the latter is too treacherous. The master is looking for a son-in-law, not a subordinate. I hope my daughter can marry a decent and peaceful person, such a person will spoil others. Chi Heiran sighed, how many people are there in this world who are temperamental and have a deep affection like a father? Mu Yangling left Chi Heiran's arms with black lines all over his head, pulled the quilt and turned around and fell asleep. Chi Heiran was wronged, you used to praise me from time to time, but how many years have I not heard you praise me? Mu Yangling turned around and kissed him lightly on the cheek, and said with a low laugh, little bear can go to the battlefield, and he told me to praise you every day, do you want to be ashamed? Chi Heiran gave her the other side of his face happily, and said, Master was praised for being wise and martial. What does it have to do with how old the child is? Mu Yangling kissed him loudly on the other cheek and laughed loudly. Chi Heiran hugged his wife in his arms, saw her pouting her mouth slightly and fell asleep, and then slowly put her on the pillow. He slept too much in the carriage during the day, and he really couldn't fall asleep at this moment. Chi Heiran touched his wife's face and thought to himself, I have to be wary of my sister-in-law tomorrow, so don't bring up the marriage again. Aling looked carefree, but sometimes his thoughts were so delicate that it made people feel distressed. Marriage is a good marriage of two surnames, and only two parties can work together to be happy and happy. If you really want to live on the love of the young couple, no matter how sweet the water is, it will turn sour in the end. On this point, Chi Heiran is more transparent than Mu Yangling, because love is a kind of emotion based on life, just like family affection, friendship, and other emotions, it must be produced and carried out in life. If you forget about life for the sake of love, then the cart before the horse. His orb is smart and cute, how could he do such a stupid thing? What's more, his daughter is second only to the princess, so many people can't ask for it, so why should he worry about her marriage? Chi Heiran thought happily while covering Mu Yangling with the quilt. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1114. Mu Boan and his wife Fang brought their eldest son Mu Feng back overnight. Mu Feng is only 5 years old this year. His nickname is Yuan Yuan. He is just naughty. When he got off the carriage, he rushed into his grandmother's room and threw himself into her arms, shouting happily, Grandma, I'm back, I'm back. Shu Wanyang hugged him happily, and said with a smile, "It's just in time to come back, Grandma will take you to see your aunt." Mu Bowen helped his wife to enter the door, and said with a smile, "Mother, where is sister? Your sister and brother-in-law are exhausted from the journey, and they are still resting. You sit down for a while, and I will ask them to wake them up for breakfast." Seeing her grandson looking at her with round eyes, he pulled him. Xiao Xiao said, "I'll take you and to see if the little bear is awake, you guys should rest first." Seeing that Fang was still standing with his stomach outstretched, he asked, "You came back overnight, do you want to ask the doctor to come and see?" Fang pursed her lips and said shyly, "There is a thick quilt in the carriage, and the carriage is very stable along the way without any bumps, so there is no need. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, go to the kitchen to see how the breakfast is getting ready." "No, no," Shu Wanyang said with a gentle smile, "you should rest well when you are pregnant, and these things will be handled by the servants." Shu Wanyang asked her son to accompany her daughter-in-law to rest, and she happily took her grandson to see the little bear. Fang had heard about this elder sister-in-law for a long time, because she knew that her in-laws respected her elder sister-in-law very much, and she had a high status, so she couldn't help being a little nervous at this time. When Mu Bowen saw her, he held her hand and said, "Sister is very kind, don't be nervous, let's go down and rest for a while, and you will see her when we have breakfast." Fang's face was troubled. "We came back so quickly that we didn't even have time to prepare for the meeting ceremony. Where is my sister?" "My sister doesn't care about these empty gifts," Mu Bowen said with a smile. "If you don't mention her, I'm afraid she will forget about the meeting ceremony. These things have always been taken care of by the big girl next to my sister. I need my brother-in-law to help my sister think." The Fang family obviously didn't believe it. Mu Yangling was a princess no matter what, so how could she not have thought of these things? Mu Yangling really didn't expect this. She was excited about returning to her natal home along the way, and she did prepare many gifts for her parents, brothers, and sisters, but those gifts were very expensive. The gift list is not a pair, and it is too expensive, and they will have to return the gift later, so these are given in private. As for the meeting gift for the child and the bride, Mu Yangling really didn't expect it. So she put a box in front of her when she got up together. Chi Heiran opened it to show her, and said, "This is a variety of meeting gifts I asked Xialo to prepare for you, and you didn't bring a girl with you. You can take it later. Go out to the girl who serves outside, let her sort it out, who will give what kind of gift is written on it, you read it and explain it." Mu Yangling picked up a gold silk bracelet and said, "When did you prepare this?" Chi Heiran nodded her forehead and said, "I have already explained it. We were on our way and Xialo was preparing it. Otherwise, how could he make so many things in a short time?" Mu Yang moved to kiss his cheek, and said happily, "Thank you for being so thoughtful." Chi Heiran hummed happily, and went to wash his face with his hands behind his back. "Hurry up and get up, don't make your mother-in-law wait too long." This is the first time for Mu Yangling to meet Fang. Fang is the daughter of teacher Mu Bowen. Her natal family is in Hanshong Mansion. She is a perfect match for Mu Bowen. This is the first time Mu Yangling saw her. Seeing her with a big belly, she felt happy. Simply ignore the gold silk bracelet that Chi Heiran prepared for her, and directly took off the jade bracelet on her wrist and brought it to her, and said with a smile, "Yu Yang Gren, I got this pair of bracelets in Zhongdu City, the best mutton fat jade bracelet, I'll take it with you." Fang quickly declined, saying, "This is too precious." Mu Yangling said with a smile, "The value is also brought by others, not to mention that you are my younger brother and sister. I was not able to come when you got married. This is a make-up." Mu Kijia went to hug Mu Yangling's hand. "Sister-in-law, you can keep it for you, she has a lot of good things in her hand," and said with a smile, "Sister, since you gave sister-in-law a meeting gift, then it should be mine too, quickly bring it to me to see what you have prepared for me." Mu Yangling asked with a smile, "What do you like?" I don't like jade like you guys. I just love gold and silver. If you can give me a silk bracelet, I will love it the most. Xu Huanyang said to Mu Yangling worriedly when she heard the words, I don't know who this child looks like. She has all kinds of piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and her manners are elegant and dignified. She just likes gold and silver. Look, what she wears is either a gold bracelet or a silver bracelets, the neck is either gold inlaid with jade or gold ornaments. Mu Bowen almost spit out the tea in his mouth. Mother, the former is fine, the younger sister is indeed good at piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but my son really can't see where she behaves elegantly and dignifiedly. She is simply a tomboy, and my sister is more elegant than her dignified. Mu Bowen's words directly offended the three women, not to mention Xu Huanyang and Mu Qijia. Even the praised Mu Yangling glared at him. Qi Heiran withdrew from the battle circle with tea, hoping not to affect himself. Seeing her husband being besieged, Fang couldn't help but pursed her lips into a smile, and changed the subject to save him. Actually, the gold and silver jewelry my sister chose is really beautiful, even I fell in love with it. Although Mu Qijia likes gold and silver jewelry, they are also exquisitely crafted jewelry, such as the silk-wrapped bracelet on her hand. The price of gold in it. And she was wearing a drop-shaped gold ornament around her neck, and she didn't know how the craftsman ordered it. The water drop gold ornament looked like it was about to fall off. Mu Yangling liked it after looking at it, so he asked, what are these, which silver house did you buy it from? Mu Qijia proudly said, this is my own business. My sister forgot that in Qiuagong opened a silver house in Hanshong Mansion, and there are members of our family in it. The silver house has opened to Xingzhou Mansion in the past 2 years. I think it's easier to buy jewelry, just order it. Mu Yangling and Qi Heiran looked at each other, and said with a smile, I really don't know about this. How do you know that there is our business in the silver building? Every year, Treasurer Qian comes over with the ledger to distribute the dividends. It says so. Mu Yangling nodded, changed the subject and said, we decided to go to the experimental farm to see, Mother, maybe we will live in the old house at night. We estimate that we will stay there for 2 more days. Let Xiao Xiang stay at home with you, okay? Xu Huanyang hesitated. If they all went to the old house, I'm afraid there won't be so many people living there. After all, there are only 5 big rooms that can accommodate people, but she really wants to spend more time with her daughter. Mu Yangling took her hand and said with a smile, Mother, don't worry, we estimate that we will stay at home for 10 or 20 days, and we will not return to Beijing until Heiran's injury is completely healed. When our daughter comes back from the farm, there will be nowhere to go, just stay with you at home. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1115. Mu Yangling's Harvest Grain Store has now become the largest grain store in Daqi. It has the most complete, best, and latest grain types in Daqi, and it also has the largest grain storage and transaction volume. All this is based on the experimental farm. Only the seeds that have been tested repeatedly in the experimental farm can be put into the market and sold to the imperial court and farmers. And she has experimental farms in Lingnan, Guangdong, Jiangnan, Baidi, and even Kiangzhou, but none of these farms are as big and important as Qinggutun. Because the seed experiment and the development of planting technology started from this farm, Mu Yangling's annual investment in this experimental farm is also the largest. The grain store is one of the 3 major industries in the palace. Although its profit rate is not as good as that of the glass workshop and the watch workshop, its annual profit is more than 3 times that of the 2 workshops combined. It has a large population, and it is still a big agricultural country, but now 8 out of 10 farmers use seeds from Fengshao Grain Shop. and the farmers who owe seeds to Harvest Grain Store will sell their grain to them in the end. In addition, the price of grain from their grain store has always been fair, and the grain harvested is also a lot under normal circumstances. Most people are willing to go to their grain shops to buy grain. As the largest grain store in Daki, Fengshao Grain Store can not only bring huge profits to the palace, but also play a role in adjusting the price of grain in the world. In the past few years, the weather was good and the grain harvest was bumper. Many grain shops lowered the price to buy grain, but only Fengshao Grain Shop's grain price dropped by less than 5 cents per stone, forcing other grain shops to buy at normal prices. In recent years, natural disasters have occurred frequently in various places. Although no major disasters have been caused, local disasters are still inevitable. According to past experience, food prices in these places will definitely rise sharply. If you are rich, at least you can make a lot of money. Fengshao grain shops are spread all over Daki. Even if there is a disaster, the price of grain will not increase by 5 cents per stone. The Fengshao Grain Store has a rich stock of grain and a strong background, so they are not afraid of them uniting to fight against each other. In the end, they can only grit their teeth and follow suit and only raise 5 cents. Because of these things, the officials of the household department can squeeze out a smile every time they see Chi Heiran. As the backup base of the grain shop, Mu Yangling naturally attached great importance to it. When he came back this time, the second thing he did was to inspect it. The experimental farm is not big, only about 200 mu, and it is divided into experimental fields. There are various crops in it, some are vibrant, and some are sickly. It seems that the next moment will dry up. Many long-term workers are walking in the field. Lu Ting is the person in charge of the experimental farm, and he followed Mu Yangling to introduce her to the various crops in the farm and their recent main research directions. Chen Sanzu and Su Jian, who had followed Mu Yangling in the early years, also ran over and knelt down to salute Mu Yangling excitedly. The two of them used to be refugees, and the other was a short-term laborer who had to run out due to debts, but now they have a lot of money. Both of them are very grateful to Mu Yangling, looking at her with hot eyes, wishing they could kneel and lick on the ground. Chi Heiran frowned slightly when he saw this. Although he knew that these two people had no other intentions, it still made him very unhappy. Chi Heiran stepped forward to block their sight, casually pointed at the crops beside him and asked, "What is this? Why does it look like grass?" Lu Ting said with a smile, "My lord has good eyesight, this is grass." Chi Heiran. Mu Yangling burst into laughter with a puchi and asked, "Is this the grass you planted?" "Yes. Didn't you write a letter asking me to pay more attention to pastures?" The north of Hanzhong was once occupied by the Jin people. Although the Jin people have retreated now, the habit of grazing can't be changed for a while, but it is too wasteful to use farmland for grazing. So I wanted to try to see if I could grow fast-growing pastures that cattle and sheep love to eat and don't pick the ground, but I've been doing it for 2 years, and the results are not great. Mu Yangling encouraged him, "As long as you persist, there will always be results. If it doesn't work, you can ask the herdsmen. They often herd in different places, and they know more about this than us." Lu Ting nodded, and led them to the experimental fields of rice and wheat. As staple food, these two seeds are still the focus of their research. Mu Yangling saw two people in official uniforms in the middle of the test field from a distance, and asked curiously, "Who are they?" "They are two adults from Sinong Temple. These two adults have been living in the farm for the past 6 months. They said that they want to learn how to cultivate new species with us." Lu Ting also looked helpless when he said this. "But they are also very powerful. They have designed 2 kinds of agricultural tools that are very easy to use." The two adults also saw the group of people here, and at the same time guessed the identities of the 2 people surrounded in the middle. They hesitated for a while, and finally they just bowed their hands and left. Chi Heiran raised his eyebrows. His impression of them improved a lot. Afterwards, he said to Mu Yangling, although these farmers don't know how to drill camps, they are rare and cute. That's because their minds are pure, Mu Yangling sighed. How many people like this do you think there are? My farm has always been far better than the experimental field of Sinong Temple, but there are some who can put down their heads and go to the farm to learn how many. After all, they still look down on farmers with mud legs. Uncle Lu Biao has made great contributions to farming these years. Have you never thought about asking for an official position for him? Chi Heiran took the opportunity to suggest, why don't you take this opportunity to promote the cooperation between Sinong Temple and the farm? Sinong Temple, although their performance has not been able to catch up with your farm, they are well-read agricultural books after all, and they have advantages over Uncle Lu Biao. If the two sides cooperate, the development of agriculture will only be faster in the future. Seeing that Mu Yangling was moved, Chi Heiran said, if you agree, I will help Lu Biao and the others find some official positions, and only in Sinong Temple. They have official positions, so you don't have to worry about them being bullied. It's not that Mu Yangling never thought of asking Lu Ting for an official position, because considering his contribution in agriculture, it's not difficult for the emperor to give him an official position, but being an official means entering Sinong Temple. He is not a serious imperial examination, he didn't even read the most basic 4 books, so he would definitely be bullied after entering, not to mention that his team members were all illiterate farmers. Scholars have always been proud and arrogant, so Mu Yangling has never thought about applying for official positions for them. In her opinion, they can achieve results in their own research, and they are still free. Chi Heiran persisted and said, scholar, farmer, businessman, and there is an official above the scholar, Aling. Being an official means honoring the ancestors. If you are undecided, you might as well ask your cousin what he means. Lu Ting's eyes widened in astonishment, and he stammered, this, you can still be an official by farming. Mu Yangling smiled and said, Sinong Temple's research is on farming. Now Daki is talking about farming, who can compare to you, uncle? Lu Ting swallowed nervously, and asked hesitantly, Aling, don't you use the power of the princess to ask for an official position for me? We can't do such a thing, and we will be stabbed in the back. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1116. Does uncle think I'm such a person? Mu Yangling smiled and said, you got it by your own ability. You were mine before, and even if Sinong Temple wanted to dig a wall, it didn't dare to do it. This time I let go. It's a matter of course for you to get an official position, but it's impossible for them to recruit you with low-level subordinates. With your achievements, it is not difficult to confer a 5th or 6th rank official. Lu Ting opened his mouth wide, and his palms were sweating from nervousness. He never thought that he would be an official one day. Lu Ting went home dizzy. Brothers Lu Daqian and Lu Erqian were lying on the deck chairs in the yard basking in the sun, and a few great-grandchildren were playing with building blocks at their feet. Seeing Lu Ting's dazed face, Lu Daqian frowned and asked, what are you doing, what's wrong? Mrs. Zhao stepped forward to support her husband, and asked with concern, did something happen to the farm? Lu Ting grabbed his wife's hand and murmured, Aling said I can be an official. Mrs. Zhao was taken aback. The first feeling was that Mu Yangling was going to seek an official position for her family by using power for personal gain. Lu Daqian and his brothers were also taken aback. Seeing that his father's expression had changed, Lu Ting immediately came back to his senses and hurriedly told what Aling said. Lu Daqian's complexion gradually improved. Mrs. Zhao looked around and asked hesitantly, here, you can become an official without imperial examinations and wars. Lu Daqian lived for a long time, so he knew more after all. He heard the words, in the past, there was a promotion of filial piety. Although it is gone now, it should be possible to elect to be an official. Aiding has no other skills, and knowing how to farm, although I don't know why farming is so good that I can become an official, but since Aling said yes, then she can. She is not a person who uses power for personal gain. Both Lu Daqian and Lu Erkin were a little excited. My Lu family can also produce an official. The life of the Lu family is not difficult now, they can be considered rich, not to mention the money Lu Ting makes, but Lu Lang's farming and livestock business is very rich. So all the great-grandchildren were sent to the academy to study, but it was of no use. So far, the Lu family has not found a single seed that can study. And the children and grandchildren serving in the army are at most a small flag, not an official, and they don't want their children and grandchildren to go to the battlefield to fight their lives, so Lu Daqian and Lu Erkin's plan for their children and grandchildren is to read some words, know how to settle accounts, and work hard to make a fortune by farming. But now the two of them immediately changed their plans, recognized full characters, could settle accounts, were proficient in farming, and became rich and became officials. Lu Daqian happily took Lu Ting's hand. This matter has not been settled yet, so we can't talk about it outside, but our family wants to celebrate well. At Ting's family, go and buy some good wine and food. Lu Daqian dragged Lu Ting into the ancestral hall to offer incense, respecting his ancestors. Lu Erkin sat on the threshold smoking a cigarette, and murmured, "Brother, we can be regarded as honorable ancestors." In the room, Lu Daqian was training his son, "For a family like us, being an official has accumulated blessings for 10 lifetimes. You must be cautious in your words and deeds, don't waste all your blessings, and accumulate virtue for future generations." Lu Ting knew that his father had always been rigorous and self-disciplined, and never did anything wrong. At this time, he made this request because he was afraid that future generations would take advantage of the situation to misbehave. He was so excited that he almost lost his composure in an instant, but his temperament did not change, so he naturally responded at this time. Lu Daqian said again, "Also, when you become an official, you must do your best. Don't be mediocre and embarrass the Lu family and Aling. Although Aling said that you deserve this official, if you don't have her recommendation and cooperation, her relationship is that even if you are 10 times more capable, you may not be able to succeed. Look at the fields, how many people know how to farm? I have never heard of anyone who can become an official just because they know how to farm, so we have to read she's good. If you don't handle the errands well, the high officials in the court will probably talk about Aling in private." "Father, these sons know it all." Lu Ting knelt on the ground and saw his father's body crumbling. He quickly got up to support him, and said, "Don't worry, if your son is capable, he will be an official. If he is not, he will resign. Absolutely don't embarrass Aling." When Lu Daqian heard about it, he hesitated for a moment before slowly nodding. That night, brothers Lu Daqian and Lu Erkin drank 2 glasses of wine and fell asleep snoring. Lu Erkin said vaguely, "Old brother, you can live a few more years, not for anything else, just for Ting can be a good official. I heard that when his parents die, all officials will resign and go home to observe their filial piety." Lu Daqian gave a jolt, opened his eyes and glanced at his younger brother, then slowly covered the quilt, responded softly, and then fell asleep. After that, Lu Daqian paid more attention to maintaining his body. He took the medicine that he thought was a waste of money before, and now he took the initiative to drink it. Mu Yangling inspected the farm for 2 days, and ended the inspection after making some adjustments. She did not return to the city immediately, but rode around here with Chi Heiran on horseback. The 5th Battalion still stands there, but it is no longer a camp for training soldiers, but a meat processing workshop for disabled soldiers and veterans. All the jerky rabbit meat that Tiger Head and the others like to eat is produced here. Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling did not enter the camp, but rode their horses and looked at the camp from a distance. Chi Heiran smiled and said, "The camp with such a tight defense should be used as a workshop by Zijin, it's really reckless. This is not a border anymore, and there is no pass. Soldiers staying here will not be of much use. You also said that this camp is well defended. Wouldn't it be a pity if it was abandoned? I think Zygen is a reasonable use of resources. If he hears this, he will definitely say, this is helping you to arrange disabled soldiers and veterans. If you don't want to say it, I will move the workshop away. Chi Heiran followed Fan Zygen's sideways glance, and looked at Mu Yang with contempt. Ling glanced. Mu Yangling laughed loudly and said, you can learn from him when you get back. Mu Yangling smelled the fragrance wafting from the air, swallowed, and said, when we go back, we will go to the workshop to ask for a few cans of jerky. I haven't eaten the jerky from our workshop for a long time. Chi Heiran drooled and said, I want to eat the food cooked by my mother-in-law. Ling, how about we go into the mountains to hunt a deer and drag it back to cook for my mother-in-law? Thinking of his mother's craftsmanship, Mu Yangling drooled, nodded, and said, okay, let's go into the mountains now and go home in the afternoon. The husband and wife went into the mountain with bows and arrows on their backs, but as an injured, Chi Heiran could only follow behind and could not do it himself. Gone. Mu Yangling was unmoved, but you still have to be careful, you'd better not make big moves in the past 2 months, you almost hurt your heart. Chi Heiran could only follow behind with his mouth pouted, until they dragged their prey back to the general's mansion and saw Shu Shi's face softened. Shu Wanyang looked at the prey thrown in the front yard by the guards, and couldn't help turning her head. Ling, are you hunting in the mountains again? Mu Yangling smiled and said, Mom, Heiran and I want to eat your cooking. Shu Wanyang scolded, then you don't have to go to the mountains to hunt in person, just go to the market to buy. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1117. Chi Heiran has visited both the north and the south, and he has eaten countless delicacies. Among other things, the skills of the imperial chefs in the palace are not bad, but when it comes to the food he wants to eat most, Shu Wanyang's cooking can occupy the top 10. As for Ling, I reluctantly gave her the 10th spot on the basis of personal preference. Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling helped deal with the returned prey, and looked at Shu Wanyang eagerly. Shu Wanyang said with a smile, it's not enough, you can't eat all the wild game, you go out to rest first, and I'll ask someone to buy something and come back. Shu Wanyang felt sorry for her daughter and son-in-law, so she took an inventory of the things in the kitchen, and made another list for people to go shopping, planning to cook more delicious food at night. Seeing that it was useless for them to stay, Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling followed Shu Wanyang's words and left. Mu Kijia asked curiously, Sister, didn't you say that the best cook in the world is the imperial cook? Why are you so greedy for mother's cooking? The dishes made by the imperial chef are naturally delicious, but the dishes made by my mother are even more delicious. Chi Heiran nodded repeatedly. The imperial cook's cooking skills are not very good. Although my mother's cooking skills are good, my food is similar to what the cook at home cooks. Mu Bowen laughed and said, that's because you lived a good life when you were young. You have a cook to cook for you. You have to be short of food and clothing like us since childhood, except that what your mother cooks is what your father and elder sister cook. Yes, Mu Bowen paused at this point, glanced at his sister and said, needless to say, my father's cooking skills, but my eldest sister's cooking skills at that time, in fact, the barbecue is quite delicious. Chi Heiran laughed loudly when he heard the words, and said, your sister can only cook 3 dishes now, except for the barbecue, the braised pork and braised lion's head are not bad. Mu Kijia's eyes widened, and he hurriedly turned to look at his sister. Mu Yangling was not at all ashamed, and said confidently, my other dishes can also be cooked and the saltiness is suitable. Is it a dish when it's cooked and salty? Chi Heiran looked at her contemptuously. Mu Yangling despised going back, at least I can still cook well, you haven't even been in the kitchen twice. Chi Heiran dragged the text and said, the gentleman cooks far away, which big man have you ever seen cook? A gentleman doesn't need to eat anymore, he only needs to drink the wind and dew. Also, when did you become a gentleman? Mu Bowen silently supported his sister. 90% of the cooks in restaurants and restaurants outside are big men. Mu Yangling clapped his hands and laughed. Exactly, the imperial chef is still a man. If you don't know how to cook, just say so. Why push it on a gentleman? Chi Heiran. Mu Kijia looked at his sister and then at his elder brother, wisely choosing to watch. Poor Chi Heiran can only be bullied by his siblings. Xu Wanyang made a table of delicious food. Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling ate their mouths full of oil. Xiao Xiong was already staring at his grandmother, and kept saying, "Grandma, please come back to the capital with us, brothers and sisters have not yet I saw you." Xu Wanyang is also reluctant to part with her grandson, but when the winter solstice comes, her youngest daughter will get married, and Bosi will also get married, and her body is not suitable for long-distance travel, so she can only make up for it by cooking more delicious food for the little bear during this time. The little bear who had lost weight due to the war was raised white and fat by Xu Wanyang in just half a month, while Chi Heiran competed with his son for food, while urging him to practice martial arts. "I am so fat that I can't even lift a sword. Daddy, look down at your stomach." The father and son fought over food. Seeing this, Xu Wanyang pursed her lips and smiled, turned her head and whispered to Mu Yangling, "I was afraid that you would be wronged when you married. At that time, Heiran was your father's immediate boss. We must have no confidence in him, so these years he could only keep delivering things to the capital, and never dared to ask his daughter to do anything for the family, just because he was afraid that Chi Heiran would get bored by it." Xu Wanyang took her daughter's hand and sighed, "Our mother and daughter are both lucky people. I hope your sister has the same luck as us. For women, the most important thing is whether they marry well or not." Mu Yangling was silent for a while, and asked, "Didn't Dad meet his future brother-in-law?" People's hearts are the most difficult thing in the world to understand. He behaves well, but who knows if the outside is the same? Even if the outside is the same, who can guarantee that he will not change in the future? Mu Yangling felt that his mother was too pessimistic, and said with a smile, "Mother, you can't pin your hopes on what kind of person your brother-in-law is, but you should think about how your sister will experience this marriage and how to behave as a person and do things. As long as the younger sister is good, even if the brother-in-law is not good, Heli will find another one. If he has a good heart, he will naturally live a good life. No. And me?" Xu Wanyang was taken aback, and quickly but twice, patted Mu Yangling's mouth lightly, and said angrily, Tanjianwuji, why do you dare to say anything outside?" Mu Yangling couldn't laugh or cry. "Isn't it what you said, and how old am I? How can I still be a child? Okay, I can't say no to you. Anyway, don't say such things again, lest you really talk about bad luck." Seeing her son standing in front of the moon gate, Xu Wanyang pushed her daughter, "Your brother is looking for you, and this child also. I don't know if there is something that is hidden from us, but Chiu Mu specially asked for 2 days off to come back these 2 days. Mu Yangling went to find Mu Bowen. Mu Bowen looked at her with a smile, "Sister, brother-in-law said you are leaving. It's just these 2 days. We have stayed for more than 20 days. The capital has already been urging us. If we stay any longer, the emperor will issue a decree to urge us." Mu Yangling asked, looking sideways at his silent brother. "You just say what you have to say. When did you learn to keep your words in your stomach?" "Sister," Mu Bowen hesitated, and said, "I want to resign." Mu Yangling was taken aback, and looked up and down at his younger brother. Mu Bowen is only 26 or 17 this year, and he is handsome and prosperous, because he has been an official for a few years and became a father. Mu Yangling asked, "Why do you want to resign, and what do you want to do after resigning?" Mu Bowen looked at her with piercing eyes. "Sister, I want to compile a new astronomical calendar, and I also want to travel all over the country to survey water conservancy." Mu Yangling opened his mouth wide. Mu Bowen looked at her pleadingly, "If I don't resign, I may not be able to do these two things in my lifetime. Only if I resign, I still have a glimmer of hope. Mu Yangling was silent for a long time, and asked, "What do your father and your wife say about this?" Yuan Yang said she listened to me, father. Mu Bowen was a little sad. Daddy didn't agree, he said that I am the eldest son and should take care of the family. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1118. Although the calendar currently used by Daki is improved every year, it is actually calculated according to the Tongtian calendar left by the previous dynasty, and the Tongtian calendar is derived from the Dian calendar of the Tang dynasty. In order to compile an astronomical calendar, in addition to being proficient in astronomy and geography, one must also know about farming and arithmetic, which is beyond the reach of ordinary people, and once it is done, it will be famous in history. Of course, Mu Yangling doesn't think that his younger brother is doing such a thing for the sake of leaving his name in history, but the key is that he has never found that he is particularly interested in this kind of thing before. He has read all 4 books and 5 classics very well, and he even took a history books discussed with her, but why do they like astronomy and calendar now? Thinking of his father's attitude, Mu Yangling planned to have a long talk with his younger brother. If he was just on a whim, then it's better to dismiss this idea as soon as possible. If not, we'll talk about it later. Mu Yangling dragged his younger brother to find a secluded place to talk. In fact, Mu Bowen really didn't think of it on a whim. He had this idea a few years ago, long before he passed the Jinshi exam. He was smart since he was a child, and he studied hard. When others were still struggling to take the talent test, he had already passed the Juran examination, and he was still in charge of an orphanage and a large farm. Compared with those scholars who closed their doors and windows and devoted themselves to studying, he thought clearly more. He thought about his future long before he was admitted to Jinshi. It's nothing more than being a Jinshi and becoming an official, but what kind of official should you be, and how should you be? He is a second-class Jinshi, but he did not stay in the capital, but chose to be devolved to a local county magistrate, which seems unbelievable to many people. Because he has a princess sister and a general father who stayed in the capital and entered Hanlin, he undoubtedly has the qualifications to worship the Prime Minister. However, he didn't want to spend 3 years in the Imperial Academy. Although the Imperial Academy could teach him a lot, he wanted to do practical things for the people in the local area. Mu Bowen has been a peaceful person since he was a child, without much ambition. In addition, he has always been protected by his sister under the wing. She taught him to have good intentions, and he has no desire for power. So he always felt that as long as he did what he liked good. After becoming a county magistrate, Mu Bowen learned more about people's livelihood. Combining his experience from childhood to adulthood, Mu Bowen felt that scholars are very important, business is very important, and work is also very important, but the most important thing is farming is not because of the so-called imperial advocacy, but a real cognition. Only when farming is sufficiently developed and there is a surplus of agricultural products, can business develop, and if you have money, you have the capital to study, and industry can develop better. In farming, apart from farming techniques and seeds, the most important things are farming time and water conservancy. When Chi Heiran was the county magistrate, he paid special attention to the construction of water conservancy in the area under his jurisdiction. Almost all the labor under his jurisdiction was spent on the construction of water conservancy. He also personally walks the villages and streets to count the farming time and record the weather day by day. Sunny, cloudy, and rainfall are all recorded. In the past 6 years, even on New Year's Eve, it has never stopped. However, this is not enough. There is too little data, and it is still far from what he wants to do. Besides, The mountains and geography are different in different places, and the water conservancy is naturally different, so he needs more data, whether it is astronomical or geographical. He has now been promoted from magistrate to magistrate, but it is not very helpful for what he wants to do. In the past 2 years, he has read all the materials and documents he can find. He wants to get more materials and field work. The survey would have to leave the state. So Mu Bowen wants to resign. He had considered this idea carefully, and he had mentioned it to his father as early as last year, but Mu Shi did not agree. Now the territory of Daki can be regarded as peaceful, but it does not rule out that there are bandits, and the son is not very strong, and he runs around all over the place. Before he has an accident, they are so worried that they can't sleep or eat. If something happens, who will they cry to? What's more, Mu Bowen is the eldest son, and the eldest son has to support the family. Now he has a wife and children, and he left with a pat on the ass. What about his wife and children? Not to mention taking them with you, not everyone has the good health of the cubs. 4 or 5-year-old children travel long distances, and they can die if they are not acclimatized or have a fever. In a word, Mu Shi just refused to allow his son to resign and go out to fulfill his so-called ideal. Mu Yangling was silent for a long time, and asked, "How is your spell?" Mu Bowen glanced at his elder sister and said, "Sister, I have read all the books on magic that I could find, and I dare not say that I am proficient, but I understand most of them. If you don't understand, you have to continue to study or find more books. Read the book. Well, you can't use this to delay time." Mu Yang touched his head with a sigh. "I didn't expect that my Mu family could produce a scientist." Mu Bowen's face was full of black lines, and he said, "Sister, I am not young anymore, you can't always touch my head." Mu Yangling ignored him and continued, "Although I am very happy, what my father said is correct. You can't bring all your siblings and children with you. First of all, you can't guarantee the safety of your children on the road, and you can't guarantee his education, but it's not right to keep them at home." Seeing his younger brother's face getting darker and darker, Mu Yangling sighed. "However, you can't think so much about ideals, otherwise can you still call them ideals?" Mu Bowen looked better now. Mu Yangling patted his butt and got up. "Since this is your ideal, then you should discuss this matter with your siblings yourself. My sister is old, so I can only support you from the heart." Mu Bowen opened his mouth wide and said, "Sister, you have to help me speak nice words in front of my father." Mu Yangling waved his hand and said, "You should go and talk to your father about this matter yourself, I will cheer for you in my heart." Mu Bowen looked at her with his mouth puffed out. Mu Yangling ran away, but couldn't sleep at night. She pushed Mu Bowen cleanly, but she couldn't really care about anything, but with her father on one side and her younger brother on the other, it seemed that it was not good to help anyone. Seeing her turn over again, Chi Heiran couldn't help pulling her over and hugging her, clamping her with his feet, holding her tightly in his arms, and muttering with his eyes closed, "Would you like if you don't sleep again, I will kill you." Mu Yangling pushed him and said, "Get up a bit, I'm so hot." Chi Heiran hugged her even tighter, and Mu Yangling sighed quietly. Chi Heiran could only open his eyes and ask, "What did Bowen tell you?" Mu Yangling could only tell Chi Heiran about his ideals and ambitions. Chi Heiran closed his eyes again, and said, "That's right, good ambition. If he can write a calendar that is more accurate than the Dayan calendar, not only will he be famous in history, but it will not be difficult to use it to make a fortune. Historically, anyone who can write a calendar, they are all proficient in agricultural arithmetic and accounting." He hugged Mu Yangling into his arms, patted her and said, "Don't worry, if he doesn't want to be a magistrate, let him go back to the capital and go directly to the Ministry of Industry. It is a more suitable place than the Ministry of Industry. After he has learned all the skills of the Ministry of Industry, he will consider going out to travel all over the country." At that time, you don't have to worry about his wife and children, because his son will definitely support the family. I don't believe he can learn all the skills of those bosses in the Ministry of Industry within 20 years. Mu Yangling. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1119. Mu Yangling took a deep look at her husband, and went to find Mu Bowen happily the next day, and then came back dejected. Mu Bowen said with a smile to his sister, in his position to seek his own government, since I have worked in the Ministry of Industry, I naturally have to do my duty to complete the affairs of the Ministry of Industry, and do what I am interested in my spare time. No matter how smart I am, it is impossible I can have both within 20 years, and if I don't do what I want in my position, wouldn't it be a disappointment to the Emperor and the people? In a word, he was transferred to the Ministry of Industry as an official, but he still couldn't devote himself to his work wholeheartedly. Mu Bowen smiled and said to his sister, "But I do ask my brother-in-law to open up some information about the Ministry of Industry for me, so that I can look up some things." Not having the best of both worlds, Mu Yangling could only go home disappointed and continue to seek advice from her husband. Mu Bowen is determined to study water conservancy and compile the calendar. Chi Heiran's method sounds like the best of both worlds. He doesn't have to resign, but he can do what he wants to do. His father-in-law and brother-in-law are not offended, but neither is Mu Bowen. Stupid, he wants to resign. Apart from wanting to go out and get more resources, it's just a matter of energy. He has never been a person who spends public money for personal reasons. Since he is an official, he must first do his own job well, and then his own ideals and hobbies. Since he pursues his own ideal wholeheartedly, he can no longer occupy an official position, which not only cuts off the future of others, but also makes him ashamed of the Emperor and the people. Mu Yangling Chi Heiran sighed and said, "The blog post is very clear, this method is useless." Chi Heiran glanced at his wife, and said in surprise, "So you know that there is something wrong with my master's method, so you still go to him? I think your method is very good. He can take care of both. Although it will take him longer to realize his ideals, how can life be as good as he wants?" But since he can persist, Mu Yangling thought for a while. "I seem to be more partial to him." Seeing her betraying his father-in-law like this, Chi Heiran hurriedly said, "Then I will write a letter to my father-in-law and ask my father-in-law to tell him that I can't let my father-in-law keep regressing, and let both sides give in." He didn't want the fire to come to him. Aling was his daughter and sister, and no matter how much the two sides quarreled, they couldn't bother her, but his son-in-law and brother-in-law were in a dilemma. Chi Heiran resolutely pushed this matter back, and only gave them advice, let them discuss the final decision by themselves. Seeing that Mu Yangling was biting her lip and thinking about it, Chi Heiran hurriedly reached out and rubbed her lips, and said angrily, "Where did I learn this bad habit? I think about things when I think about things, why bite my lips?" "That's fine, the blog post wants resignation is not something that can be accomplished in a day or two. Let's put it aside for now. You should think about our departure the day after tomorrow. Your mother-in-law has prepared so many delicious things for us. Have you put them away? And, little bear, you've been playing like crazy for the past few days, you have to keep him at home tomorrow, and don't let him run away." Seeing that Mu Yangling was still hesitating, he continued, "Bowen has been thinking about resigning since last year, and it has been more than a year now. Isn't he still a good official? He is the eldest son, so he should do more responsibilities. Father-in-law's test is definitely not easy, in my opinion. It won't work in 3 to 5 years, so you should put your mind on us father and son first." Mu Yangling gave him an angry look and went to pack his luggage. Chi Heiran breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that he had finally distracted his wife's attention. But he ignored Xu Wanyang. Xu Wanyang is a conscientious and loving mother. Her daughter and son-in-law are about to leave, and she can't wait to go on the road with them. In this case, She doesn't have to worry about what Mu Yangling wants to take away. Xu Huanyang will do it for her. When Mu Yangling went to the room, Xu Huanyang was instructing the girl to pack her things, and when she saw her daughter coming, she said, "Why did you come? You are a real kid, you are leaving soon the day after tomorrow, I just think about it today. Come to pack your luggage, what if you leave something behind?" Mu Yangling opened his mouth wide open looking at the pile of boxes and baggage. "Mother, we came here easily, how can there be so many things? These are the clothes and some delicious food that your mother made for you. Only then did I know that even the little clothes are made by the big girls around you. You are too careless, I should have pressured you to learn how to make them back then." Clothes are. Mu Yangling pouted, "Mom, I can make clothes? I see. When I was packing my luggage yesterday, I found a coat in my uncle's bag. I knew it was made by you. The stitches are so big that you can stuff a hand in it. It's just my uncle. I don't mind wearing it on my body." Mu Yangling couldn't help stomping his feet, turned around and pulled out the underwear, and asked, "Where can I put a hand in? It's so delicate, you can't exaggerate like this. It's not too big. The stitches can be seen when the clothes are stretched open. Look at this one I made for you." Mu Yangling glanced at the clothes in his mother's hand, turned his head away and said childishly, "I don't look at it, anyway, I think I'm pretty good at cutting cloth into clothes and sewing them together stitch by stitch. The stitches are so fine that they can be sewn by a sewing machine. You still despise the skill, how many people want me to be their daughter?" Xu Huanyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You kid is boasting again. Who is Feng Renji? Is he a very powerful embroidery lady? You don't need to compare with her, just compare with your sister." Mu Yangling said with an embarrassing face, "Yes, Feng Renji is a embroiderer." Mu Yangling couldn't agree with Xu Huanyang, so he could only follow her orders to pack the luggage. Not only his and Chi Heiran's, but also several children's, and even Fan Zijian's family. She whispered to Mu Yangling, "I always remember that child was handsome and handsome. He came to eat with Heiran." The smile on his face never fell. When Heiran was messing around, he could still talk to him. "I used to make clothes and sew for him. Well, last time I saw him, his daughter-in-law was nice, this time you also brought them something back." At the end of the hearing, Mu Yangling simply listened to the order to pack her luggage while thinking about other things, and at this stage it was Mu Bowen who worried her most. When people have ideals, life can be fulfilled and life can be more meaningful. Mu Yangling doesn't say anything, but in his heart he is more in favor of Bowen's resignation and doing what he likes. As for what the father said about the eldest son supporting the family, it was actually not very important. In this era, the concept of clan is very strong, but Mu Yangling has the memory of the previous life, and feels that although the clan is important, the small family and everyone are more important than it. Xiajia is a small family, while everyone is a country. Bowen feels that to realize ideal happiness, Fang is also willing to support her husband, so their entire small family will be taken care of. What Bowen does is a great good for the country and the people's livelihood, that is to take care of everyone, and to have both under the circumstances. Clan is not so important. The Mu family has power, so they don't need blog posts to fight in the officialdom, and they don't need him to fight for family. In this case, why don't they do something that they like and are good for the country? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1120. Mu Yangling lost his mind, packed his luggage according to his mother's instructions, and locked himself in the study. Mu Yangling thought about it for a long time, and finally wrote a letter to his father. It's not that she doesn't know her father's expectations. The Mu family is already full of flowers. Bosi pursues martial arts, and Bowen pursues literary paths. The two brothers complement each other with each other. However, Bowen is unwilling to be an official anymore, which is equivalent to cutting off half of the Mu family connections in his plan. In his father's view, Bowen is inevitably a bit selfish and too irresponsible. However, time went back to 20 years ago. What was their original intention? At that time, Mu Shi only wanted to make money to take care of his wife and raise his children. His expectation for Mu Yangling was to learn from female celebrities, marry a good family, and live a happy life with his son-in-law. The expectation for Mu Bowen is also to be able to pass the examination as a scholar after reading and literacy, and to give the Mu family a shelter. Mu Shi's original intention has already been realized. Mu Yangling is not very good at persuading people, so she can only ask her father what his ideal was 20 years ago. Mu Yangling told him that her previous ideal was to improve planting techniques, improve grain seeds, and make farmers have a better life. The short-term goal was to plant good land and stop running around for a living, so she hired Uncle Biao to study upland rice seeds. So she started a cattle farm, and now, more than half of her dream has been realized. My younger brother now has an ideal for him to strive for all his life. As we are about to realize his ideal, should we break his wings and interrupt his ideal? The anguish of having ideals but not being able to practice them and to work hard can bend one's will. Would you like to see a son whose eyes are full of anguish? Is the development of family power really more important than your son's happiness? As for the children and grandchildren, the prince and I often say that our children and grandchildren have their own blessings. In the future, the tiger head, the little lion and the little leopard will have to work hard and fight for their own future. The Mu family can provide enough resources for future generations. If their future if it is to sacrifice the ideals of the ancestors to realize them, it is better not to have them. When Chi Heiran and his son came back with a bunch of presents in their arms, they heard that his wife had locked him in the room, so he immediately put the things in his hands into the hands of the guards behind him, and patted his buttocks to find her. Guard. My lord, my humble hand is full of things, and you still pile them on me. Are you treating me like a mule? The guards behind him, who also had big bags and small bags, gave him a sympathetic look, and carefully bypassed him and sent their things to the flower hall, sending what should be sent out, and what should be packed into luggage. Little Xiong also wanted to follow his father's footsteps, but he also had a lot of things in his hands. He looked at the guards who were almost submerged in packages, and silently went to the flower hall with his things, and decided to go to his parents later. Up. Chi Heiran broke into the room directly, saw that Aling was putting the envelope into the envelope, and asked curiously, "Are you writing a letter? I thought you locked yourself in the room and cried." "Why should I cry?" Mu Yangling sealed the envelope, wrote his father's name on it, and handed the letter to him. "Send it to Taiyuan as quickly as possible to give it to my father." Chi Heiran took the letter and said casually, "Because you are leaving, I thought you would be reluctant to part with your mother-in-law and shut yourself in the room crying. By the way, what do you write in the letter? You have to send it by horse, you can't use a carrier pigeon. The pigeons may be lost, so it's better to use a horse," Mu Yangling said seriously. Chi Heiran slapped his hands. The secret documents that need to be delivered by carrier pigeons are either covered by secret words or special potions. The cost is too high, so important matters that are not urgent are still delivered through the post station. Chi Heiran pointed the envelope at the son and looked at it, and asked in a low voice, "What did you write inside?" Mu Yangling sighed, "I advised Dad to let Bowen do what he likes." Chi Heiran was surprised. Didn't it be agreed before that the two would not help each other? "But I feel sorry for Bowen," Mu Yangling shrugged, "I brought him up with one hand. He is so busy and still runs home every 3 days. Doesn't he just want me to help him say something in front of his father? I am him. Elder sister." Chi Heiran tilted his head and looked at her for a while, then nodded slowly and said, "That's fine." Mu Yangling called Bowen to his side, looked at him for a while, and finally patted him on the shoulder and said, "I've written to persuade my father. Now that you have made up your mind, Prepare for the follow-up matters. Also, don't let him brothers and sisters suffer with you. If you have anything to tell me in time, if your father still doesn't agree, don't worry, I will help you. Mu Bowen's eyes turned red, and he couldn't help but lower his head. Mu Yangling was amused. I told you not to treat you like a child before, and now I'm crying in just one sentence. Mu Bowen forced a smile and said, it's because the wind is blinding my eyes, not crying. When Mu Kijia saw his elder brother coming out of his elder sister's room with red eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little envious in his eyes. Although their brother and sister have a good relationship, they are always not as good as the elder brother and elder sister's previous relationship. Mu Yangling watched Bowen leave from the window, sighed quietly, and was about to close the window when he saw Mu Kijia standing on the other side, and couldn't help waving at her. Kijia. Mu Kijia raised the tray in Yang's hand and said, sister, these are the dim sums that my mother just made. Let me bring you some. I said that if you like her, you can make more and ask you to take it with you to eat on the way. Mu Yangling picked up a piece and tasted it. Seeing that there were 2 pieces of diced meat wrapped in it, and the dim sum was salty, his eyes lit up and he nodded repeatedly, it's delicious. Mu Kijia couldn't help laughing. Mother also said that it must be to your taste, and she also fried a lot of diced meat and meat sticks for you, saying that she will let you eat it on the road. Mu Kijia pouted and said, I see that my mother can't wait to move all the things for you. Yesterday she asked someone to go to my uncle and aunt's house to ask for a few jars of dried vegetables and sauerkraut, saying that she wanted you to eat them on the way. Forget about the jerky. How come pickled cabbage and dried vegetables have to be stuffed into the car? Isn't this a waste of space? But Mu Yangling couldn't help swallowing and said, I just like to eat dried vegetables and sauerkraut from my uncle's and aunt's homes. You don't know, vegetables are the most rare thing on the road. It's okay to encounter villages, but if you don't, you can only eat them. Eat barbecue, all kinds of jerky and steamed buns, maybe dig some wild vegetables when you have enough time, but now it is autumn, the wild vegetables are very old and not delicious. Bring sauerkraut and dried vegetables, and directly from the just grab a handful of vegetables from the jar and eat them. Envious, Mu Kijia leaned into her ear and said, sister, when do you think I will be able to walk around like you? Just wait until you get married. At that time, my brother-in-law will be released, and you can't leave home if you don't want to. Mu Yangling said with a smile, maybe when you are old and your children can stand on their own, you can go with your brother-in-law traveling in mountains and rivers. Mu Kijia looked forward to it and said, how many years from now, I really envy you and elder brother, you can go wherever you want. Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows and asked, why did you bring your eldest brother with you? He is an official ordered by the court, so he has to stay in office. Brother wants to resign, so I'm hiding this from my mother, Mu Kijia said, although he didn't say it clearly. During the Chinese New Year he had a quarrel with his father and Bosi, and I heard it. Sister, you are on the side of big brother, so dad can only compromise. Didn't mother say that dad listens to you the most? Mu Yangling was thoughtful. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1121. If you want to say whom she listens to the most, it is naturally Shu Wanyang. Mu Yangling's daughter is used to discuss things, so it is natural to obey his wife's orders. Now that everyone knows, there is no need to hide it from mother alone. Thinking that they were leaving the next day, Mu Yangling left Chi Heiran to sleep with Shu Wanyang at night. The mother and daughter were lying on the same bed, and Shu Wanyang smiled and said, is there something confidential that you want to tell me so quietly? You also left my uncle behind. Mu Yangling blushed, is it necessary to have a secret to sleep with you? Don't allow your daughter to miss her mother. Xu Huanyang smiled and said, "You have been like a little adult since you were a child. When you were so young, you were arguing to sleep by yourself. I haven't seen you for so many years because I thought I would sleep with me. Tell me, after all, what's the matter? If you don't tell me, my mother will fall asleep." Mu Yangling hurriedly hugged her hand. "Mother, my daughter has something to tell you, but I really miss you, I can't bear you." Xu Huanyang looked at her with a half smile. Mu Yangling said cheekily and seriously, 10 years have passed since the last time we parted in the capital. This time we can meet again because my daughter went out with the prince to have the chance. I don't know when the next time we will meet. How could I not think about it, mother? Xu Huanyang also felt a little sad. She patted her daughter's hand and said, "Who would have thought that the two meetings between our mother and daughter would become farther and farther apart? In the past, it was only the distance from the capital to Xingzhou Prefecture, but now it has become the distance from the capital to Taiyuan. It may not be so far next time." Xu Huanyang was sad for a while, thinking that her daughter must have something important to tell her before she came to share the bed with her, so she hurriedly asked, "Tell me, what is it?" "Mother can do for you, mother will do it." Mu Yangling said what he thought about the blog post, and said in a low voice, "I don't think there's anything wrong with this. If you don't become an official, you won't be an official. In the end, being an official is just a profession and a choice. How many people can think so clearly like you?" Xu Huanyang sighed. "It's not wrong for your father to want the Mu family to prosper. The Mu family is the only branch of our family, and there are only Bosi and Bowen under my father. They are all promising now, isn't it prosperous enough? As for Bosi and Bowen, they have to work hard on their own. My father is worried. There are too many, so when will he have time to spend the rest of his life with you?" Xu Huanyang glanced at her, and said with a smile, "I know you love your brother, don't use our old couple as an excuse, just tell me what you want to ask your mother to do." Seeing that his mother had no intention of objecting at all, Mu Yangling hugged her arm and asked, "Mother, you also support Bowen, don't you?" Xu Huanyang sighed, "I can't say I support you, but people will be happy if they can do what they like. Mother doesn't have big expectations, as long as the four of you are safe and happy. As you said, your father is old, how can he take care of you all the time? I don't want him to work so hard all the time." Xu Huanyang was inevitably a little angry when she said this. "You are also bad, and you keep everything from me at home. If it wasn't for me this time, would you have to wait until Bowen resigns before telling me?" Mu Yangling flattered him and said, "Mother, isn't this father's repeated orders not to allow us to make you sad? You have to pass his test before we can tell you anything." Xu Huanyang's heart was both sweet and astringent, sweeter than the barrier her husband had erected for her, and astringent because she could not share anything for him so far. Mu Yangling seemed to know what she was thinking, and hugged her arm and said, "Mother, my father used to say that he was able to marry you because of the blessings he cultivated in 10 lifetimes. It takes 10 lifetimes of blessings to marry you. He can't marry you, hold you in the palm of your hand and hold you in your mouth." Xu Huanyang blushed pretty, and couldn't help pinching her daughter. Mu Yangling looked at her blushing face by the light, and sighed, "No wonder Dad dotes on you so much. If you go out with me now, others will definitely think it's my older sister. No, maybe I thought it was my younger sister." Xu Huanyang blushed even more. "What kind of nonsense is this talking about? Go to bed quickly, or go back to your room. The more you talk, the less serious you will be." Mu Yangling smiled and fell asleep holding Xu Huanyang. The next morning, they set off to leave. Xu Huanyang insisted on sending them to the gate of the city. Seeing the carriage going away, she couldn't help but burst into tears. Mu Qijia could only comfort her, "I'll take you to see my sister in the capital later. Otherwise, my sister should be sad too." Zai Yuheng also advised her, "Maybe in 2 years Daki will take back the land occupied by Zixia, and my cousin will follow the prince again. Mu Bowen sent them to the Shili Changting pavilion. Mu Yangling lifted the curtain of the car, waved to him, and said, "Go back quickly, no matter whether you resign or not, you will go to the Ministry of Industry in the capital from now on. Are you afraid that you won't have a chance, Meet? Mother may be crying now, you go back and persuade her." Mu Bowen nodded silently. Seeing that the carriage was about to move, he hurriedly took 2 steps forward, and said anxiously, "Sister, Yuan Niang wrote to me, and the doctor said she was pregnant with twins, so I decided to wait 2 years before mentioning it. Don't quarrel with my father about my resignation." Mu Yangling was taken aback, and asked, "Why did I quarrel with my father?" He said happily, "My brother and sister are also pregnant with twins. There is no history of twins in the Shu family, so it is inherited from the father. For twins, please consult a doctor in advance, pay attention to nutrition, but don't take too many supplements." Mu Yangling wanted to say something, and finally said, "Forget it, I'd better write you a letter and list all the things you need to pay attention to." Mu Yangling reluctantly bid farewell to her younger brother, and she didn't feel it was right until she walked far away. "Why is Bowen suddenly worried that I will quarrel with my father? I had a drink with him last night, and my father-in-law seemed to have asked someone to send him a letter, probably because he disagreed with him telling you about it," Chi Heiran explained. "The letter I sent is in father's hands." Mu Yangling was surprised. "No," Chi Heiran counted his schedule, and finally guessed, "Bowen always runs home during this time. Since my sister-in-law knows that he wants to resign, he should not be able to hide from those in charge. Father-in-law stays in the mansion. If someone is involved, he will naturally know about these movements. That's why he sent a letter to warn Mu Bowen, right?" Mu Yangling's face was a little ugly. "Is the relationship between father and Bowen so bad?" Chi Heiran hugged her comfortingly and said, "It may not be that bad. Don't think about the bad things. Last time in the army and father-in-law only met twice in a hurry, but his heart and feelings for you haven't changed much. I miss him. He should still be kind to Bowen." Mu Yangling said sadly, "You don't understand, father and Bowen are different from ordinary father and son. When Bowen was young, his father was away for many years. I have always been responsible for Bowen's education. When I got married, Bowen was already able to take care of himself. Now, my father educated him mostly through me, so if they can't communicate well, there will definitely be rifts. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1122. Mu Yangling was right in thinking. There was indeed a crack between Mu Shi and Mu Bowen, otherwise Mu Bowen would not have approached Mu Yangling. I hope that my sister's participation can reconcile the conflict between their father and son. But a letter from Mu Shi directly extinguished Mu Bowen's enthusiasm. In the letter, Mu Shi blamed Mu Bowen for not thinking about his sister. Marrying into the royal family requires prudence in words and deeds, and there are many things to do. His sister finally came back. Do you want her to worry about your affairs? Warn him not to tell Mu Yangling about these things. Mu Bowen couldn't help being sad. He couldn't tell his mother about this matter. Younger brothers and sisters are not easy to interfere. If there is no elder sister to mediate in the middle, then would he and his father have to be in such a stalemate all the time? My younger sister told him that when conflicts arise between people, they should be resolved immediately and communicate actively. Otherwise, the longer the time, the small conflicts will become big conflicts, and even become a thorn in the heart. Whether the other party is a stranger or a familiar person, it is not good for things to evolve to this extent. The former will make them an enemy, the latter they will be sad. And he is indeed sad now, but when he had a disagreement with his father at the beginning, he wanted to have a good talk with his father, but his father was either too busy to take time off, or he quarreled whenever he met, and he couldn't communicate well. When he made up his mind to finish his sentence no matter how difficult it was, his father set off. Now nearly a year has passed, and there is almost no communication between father and son. He has already felt that the contradiction between father and son is getting bigger and bigger, and when his sister comes back at this time, she can't help but give Mu Bowen a kind of support. Compared with his stalwart father and loving mother, his elder sister is more like his guide in life. So seeing her, Mu Bowen told her his troubles almost without hesitation. Just the night before, he thought that the conflict between him and his father should be resolved this time, but he didn't expect his father to be so resistant. Even think of him that way. Could it be that in the eyes of his father, he is such a selfish person who doesn't care about his brothers and sisters? Thinking of the harsh wording in the letter, Mu Bowen's eyes became a little sour, and he tried not to show any abnormalities. He went home to bid farewell to his mother before returning to his post. Mu Yangling worried for 2 days, and finally couldn't help writing a letter to her father. This time, she stopped persuading her and just asked her father what happened between him and Bowen. Mu Yangling felt that she only listened to what the blog post said, maybe her father's understanding would be different from what they thought. So you should still ask your father to see what he said and what he thought. This time Mu Yangling didn't use the post station to send a letter, but used the flying pigeon to send a letter. And Mu Shi, who was far away in Taiyuan, had just received the first letter from Mu Yangling at this time. Mu Shi was a little annoyed at first, and he sighed after seeing the date of the letter. It seems that his letter to Bowen was still late. Step. Mu Shi opened the letter, read it, his eyes were full of complicated emotions, and his face couldn't help showing a little bit. If Aling didn't say anything, he would almost forget the past. Mu Shi put down the letter, knocked on the table involuntarily, sat on the chair and began to think about the details of these years. He didn't move a single step until dusk fell and the room was completely dark. The servant who came outside to light the lamp couldn't help calling out hesitantly, "Master." Mu Shi came back to his senses, and said in a hoarse voice, "Back off, there is no need to light the lamp." The servant was about to ask if he wanted to set up a meal, but when he saw that there was no movement inside, he felt a little uneasy, so he didn't dare to ask any more questions, and stepped back slowly. But in the room, Mu Shi's eyes were a little wet, and his hand holding the letter was tightened and loosened. In the final analysis, he was promoted too fast these years, his heart was too big, and he neglected his family. Only then did Mu Shi realize that he was not a good father. Mu Yangling likes her parents in this life very much, because her mother Xu Wanyang is a typical loving mother who puts her children first. Although she is weak, as long as her children are involved, she can bend like a bamboo. Yangling can ignore all the shortcomings of her mother, and is willing to open her hands to protect her under her wings. Although her father was from the feudal era, he was not arbitrary at all. When she was a child, whatever she wanted to do or the strange ideas she came up with, although my father disagreed with him in his heart, he would still let her go and let her go. She wore men's clothes, went hunting in the mountains and forests, and sold prey in the city. She was more tolerant of her and her younger brother than her mother. In contrast, her father in the previous life was more like a person from the feudal era, so Mu Yangling liked Mu Shi very much. And the quality of a person cannot be easily changed. At this time, Mu Shi's tolerance and introspection made him figure out some things. In the letter, Mu Yangling talked about their life and past events for 20 years, which also made Mu Shi start to recall, from 20 years ago to the present, and in the memory, the problems between him and his son Bowen were naturally it stands out. After all, it was his fault. It was okay before Bowen was 5 years old. At that time, they lived in Linchin village. Although he had to go to the mountains to hunt or go to the city to sell prey every day, he spent half a day with his son every day, making toys for him, and pushing him on the ground. Go out to play on your shoulders, read and practice calligraphy with him, and teach him the principles of life. But after the age of 5, Everything changed since they fled to Xinzhou Prefecture and were incorporated as military households. He was going to live in a military camp. At first, he could take 2 days off in a month, and then he had to run away after receiving a mission. To go to the kingdom of Jin, it takes 3 to 4 months or half a year. Boys are the most naughty when they are 5 years old and up, and it is also the time when children receive education and need their father the most. However, at that time, he can count the number of times he goes home a year with a slap. He knows Wanyang's temperament, and Bowen's education is still a spirit is in charge. It can be said that Aling played the role of father and sister in Bowen's life. So although Bowen admired him as a father, he was used to discussing things with his sister and complaining to Aling. When he finally settled down and didn't have to run out for years, his son was already able to take care of himself. Not only could he study well, but he could also handle the affairs of the farm and the nursery. Fan, for such a sensible son, he has almost nothing to teach him. The only time he made up his mind was 2 times, one was when he failed the provincial examination, and the other was when he got married. However, the former was the one he was hesitating to ask him, while the latter was the one he had already chosen for him to talk about kissing. Since he has hardly cared about him for 20 years, why should he think it is good for him to make decisions for him at this time? Mushi sighed. After all, it was because of his big heart. He has already been a second-rank general. He has made great contributions this time, and his intention to be promoted to a second-rank general is on the way. From now on, his connections in the army will be inherited by Bosi, and Bosi will be a member of the 3rd rank at worst in the future. General, and Bowen was born as a second-class Jinchi, so it is not a problem to be a 3rd-rank civil servant with his ability. The 2 brothers have both civil and military skills. As long as they live in harmony, the Mu family's prosperity will not be a problem for a century. It is this heart that makes him unwilling to let his son resign. But recalling the days and ideals of 20 years ago, his persistence now is like a joke. Back then, didn't he just want the children to be safe and happy for a lifetime? But what he is doing now is cutting off his joy.